Girls and Geese presents the Girls and Geese Podcast, Episode 3. Featuring our guests, 3rd degree black belt Dr. Val Worthington, 2nd degree black belt Bernadette Watkins Robinson, Averi Clements of the Jiu-Jitsu Times, and Torrie O'Neil of the Mighty Dames. Along with our guests, we are joined by the Girls and Geese Program Director, Shama Ko, and Girls and Geese Colorado Lead Ambassador, Sharicka Long O'Neil.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to yet another Girls and Geese podcast. My name is Shama. I'm the Program Director here at Girls and Geese. I got my partner in crime, Sharicka Long O'Neil. How's it going, Sharicka?
Good. I'm ready to get this started.
Awesome. Well, we have a wonderful episode for you guys today. We have 4, not just 3, not our normal 3. We got 4 lovely ladies on today. We have Miss Val Worthington. How are you doing today, Val?
I'm great, Shama and Sharicka, and all the ladies. Nice to be here.
Awesome. We have Bernadette Robinson. How you doing, Bernadette?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. We have Miss Torrie O'Neil. How's everything out in Florida, Torrie?
I mean, besides COVID, just doubling, pretty good.
Awesome. And from Jiu-Jitsu Times, we have Averi Clements. How's everything in Australia, Averi?
Hey guys, it's actually a little chilly here, but we're otherwise doing okay. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you over there too.
Yeah. It is 3:40 in the morning.
No, thank you so much for staying up.
No, thank you for inviting me.
We'll get you to bed soon enough. Awesome. So today's episode, there's a lot going on in the jiu-jitsu world right now. There's a lot going on in the entire world right now, and especially in the United States. There's a lot of conflict and turmoil, and so we wanted to kind of talk about inclusiveness in jiu-jitsu. Recently, Torrie had written an article for us talking about how we can make jiu-jitsu more inclusive. And I happened to post it in a women's group. I posted it in many women's groups. And the one women's group that really engaged in it and started talking about it was the Master Women's group. And one thing that I found really interesting by posting out this article was that I found that so many women commented back. The question I posed with her article was, how can we make jiu-jitsu more inclusive? And the comments that came back to it were so interesting to me. I've been doing this for 17 years. A lot of you guys have been doing this for a long time as well. And they came back saying jiu-jitsu is inclusive. And I was like, wow. We've really come a long way that these women in jiu-jitsu are sitting here now saying, I feel included. I feel a part of this. And that made me feel really happy because, I've dedicated my life to helping make a more inclusive spot for women. But then it got me thinking, do we know where we came from? And how does this relate to what was going on now in the entire world and the jiu-jitsu world is first? So I wanted to pose this to all of you guys. We hear that catchphrase, jiu-jitsu is for everyone. First off, do you ladies believe that jiu-jitsu is for everyone? And if not, have you ever not felt welcome on the mats? And if you feel that it isn't inclusive, how can we make it more inclusive?
I think that in theory, jiu-jitsu is inclusive. It's a great theory. It's a great ideal to strive for. But there are lots of areas where we could do better. And I was happy to read too, Shama, that there are a lot of women who believe that jiu-jitsu is inclusive because it means that we have made some progress, but there's still definitely much, much farther to go. And so I like the idea of jiu-jitsu is for everybody as a goal, as opposed to a reality.
I also, I think it's inclusive, and I'll say this way, some of the times. I don't think in all situations that jiu-jitsu is inclusive. I actually don't buy the come one, come all thing at all, because I understand it as a woman that in order to be included, I've had to push scrape and set myself in a room and refuse to leave. So I want to be included, and it would be nice to think that everyone was included, but there are lots of things that determine whether or not you're included in the jiu-jitsu environment.
Yeah, I'd like to know, like I saw the responses as well, and I agree that we are inclusive, but you also have to look at what is the demographic saying they feel included. Is it mostly white people? Is it mostly straight people? Is it most cisgender, or, you know, your sex is as you were born? Is it those people? I feel like when you look like a wide sweeping, of course we look a lot more inclusive. Like we talk about society, of course we look more inclusive than the 50s and the 60s. But when you look on a micro level, we've all, I mean, I can personally think of, like, I've heard multiple times extremely homophobic things within a gym. And as a gay person, like, I don't feel included during those moments. So it's like, depending on what demographic are we saying is included in the whole thing.
I definitely agree with what everyone has said. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, your individual experience, like Torrie mentioned, because you look at even the littlest things. Like I noticed in our gym, which is still under construction, but there's no ramp or anything leading up to the restroom. So this little gap like this could be a real hindrance for somebody who, you know, may be using a wheelchair or something like that. And so it's easy, you know, for some people to say, for me as a white woman, to say, yeah, my gym is great. You know, like I have never felt discriminated against as a white woman, you know, and I know we have multiple people of color in the gym who feel the same. But like, if you look at every single demographic, I think it's worth examining those things that, you know, we wouldn't even consider. But, you know, how many little steps are there that it's just that big? But it could be preventing, you know, a whole demographic of people from accessing jiu-jitsu.
And to piggyback onto that, so the question of whether jiu-jitsu is inclusive, then I think hinges on people's responses to those observations, right? So, you know what, there's no ramp. So is that observation met with, you know what, we need to do something about that? Or is that observation met with, why is this person complaining about this? You know,
Yeah.
so there's sort of that two-part conversation going on, right? The awareness raising and then the response to that. And that, I think those two things need to be in tandem, working in harmony.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree as well. Do you guys have any kind of personal stories that maybe you yourself has felt maybe not excluded? Anybody here?
Okay. I like to say in general, like I was very fortunate to, because like I said, I live in the South. I'm in Florida. You never really know sometimes. When I first got to my gym, I didn't come out because I know I'm in a very rural area, and you don't know how people are going to respond to that. People tend to be easier when you're a gay woman than a gay male, but early on, I kept that part of myself silent. But I remember someone that, of course, they're not even with our gym anymore because those people kind of weed themselves out. They made an off-the-cuff comment, and I had that moment of like, am I going to say something and like just put it out there, or am I going to be quiet and let them think that I am co-signing on what they're saying? So as soon as I made a comment, after I was like, hey, you realize I'm in that group you're talking about, it was like they instantly self-corrected and they were extremely apologetic. And what that made me, what was kind of a realization for me is, I don't think 100% of the people who say discouraging things are doing it from a malicious place. I truly think, and I say ignorance a lot, and I don't mean it as a harmful word. I really do believe that it's a place of ignorance, that they're unaware of what they're saying can have such an extreme impact on an individual. Because if someone says something, off the cuff about lesbians, and like they say in a haha joking manner, like it's very, very casual. Well, to me now, it's like, how do these people feel about lesbians? Like, do I want to open up any part of my place to them? And you can say like, oh, jiu-jitsu doesn't have a play. That doesn't have to do with jiu-jitsu, but let's be honest, we share our whole life stories on the mat. So that was an instance for me where I was like, okay, well, I have to speak up or they're going to think it's fine. And, the next white belt that comes in is going to think that's how our gym is, when I know being in the gym, that's not how we are.
I have an experience. Thank you. I have an experience. I will give you a more recent one. I've been in this for a very long time, 23. I don't even know how long anymore. But a more recent experience that I had right before COVID is at a gym where someone was playing some music, and the music referred to people. I would just say it out, but I'm gonna respect that not to do that. Every other word was the N word and F that B and let me get some of this and that. And I confronted the person. I said, that's a little harsh. And what they said, the young man said is, oh, well, we just have to get used to it because that's the world today. And so I again said, that's a little harsh. Are you listening to the words? And he didn't change the music. And I politely put my stuff on and left. That's your message. I'm out, because I've asked you once on many levels. It was and there were children in the room too. So that's just an added piece, because I was in the room and I told you I'm uncomfortable, and your response is get used to it, because I'm older. You know, I'm 59, almost 59. So it was like, oh, this is a young people say, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to excuse myself now, so Bernadette is not one step removed from being Bernadette, the other one.
Bernie.
and so there are times when you have to make that choice, and sometimes it's right on the spot. Do you stay in this room or do you leave this room? Do I sacrifice the next 5 roles or half a lesson and bear with this abusive behavior, as far as I'm calling it abusive, this abusive behavior, or do you go home and call it a day, you know, and take another chance at it? I'm in New Hampshire. There's not a whole bunch of places to go. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot, but there's not. So, you know, that was my more recent experience. But
was there any additional follow-up, or was that the end of the conversation?
COVID-19 came. I actually did not go back for a couple of sessions because I wasn't in that frame of mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Things had started percolating, and it was time to sit back.
That's fair.
So Bernadette and Val, you guys have been training for a long time. You guys have been in this game for a long time. All of you guys have been training for a while now. And I think that you guys have seen that transition from women and it's still the case in a lot of places, where it was rare to see women on the mats. You go back 10 years, it was still pretty rare to see women on the mats. It's grown tremendously. You know, thinking about that time and all the hardships that all the women have had to go through before us, what are some things that have changed in jiu-jitsu? Like, looking at the positives, what are some things that when you first started, all of you first started, you have seen that transition to making a more inclusive environment? And are there still issues? And if so, what are the ones that you see that we need to address?
So bear in mind that my perspective is mine. I am a white, cis, able-bodied woman. So the things that I have seen are going to differ from someone who is not in those categories. I started training, I think, in 1998. And one of the things that was interesting to me was, I know I just dated myself, right? So, so you're like, I was
8 years old.
Okay, Torrie, you're grounded for even saying how old you were in 1998. So what I found, and I'm very interested in what the rest of you ladies have experienced too, but what I found was more often than not that I was a curiosity or that I didn't compute. So, well, what is she doing here? Why you want to train jiu-jitsu? Why do you want to train jiu-jitsu? So there wasn't even a context within which what I was trying to do as a woman was making sense to people. And so I think that's a big switch. I think that now there are so many more, just as a subculture, as a community, I think we're all doing a much better job of saying, you know what, we actually really want women here. We value what they have to offer. And I think a big part of that was we're seeing some amazing high-level competition in Bernadette's and my generation. So women in jiu-jitsu are computing more now, if that makes sense.
I agree with you. Mine is kind of funny. I always felt like when I got a gi, it felt like a bag. And because I'm a curvy girl. And now there are even gis that are cut, you know, for particular bodies, and that's men and women. But that I felt a little more included when I wasn't trying to figure out the man size that I fit in. And it's a little thing, but for me it was an important it's an important part of kind of becoming part of the community. I think Leica was around when I started, and I always remember seeing her and a couple of other ladies that I don't know their names now at the Pan Ams, and being, wow, somebody is doing this somewhere, but nobody was speaking English. So I was like, well, I guess they're not from here. But it was good to see, you know, it was good to see someone else it was good to see someone else on the mat, because most of the time, and sometimes even now, I'm the only woman on the mat. And part of it is geographic, you know, but even though there are a lot of women, I think there are hubs of a lot of women, and the other places where there still are not that many women. And the Valerie, you said something and I want to pick up on, and I have the Ds, I call them the Ds, but I felt the same way a lot, dismiss. So if someone was getting in a group, if someone was getting a partner, I was always like, who can I go to? Like, that's not going to be like, you're not worth, you know, and then we go to the next D, discrediting of, you know, either dismiss her or, yeah, she's not good enough. So discredit, you know, the work that I'm doing. But I did find some good people in Kenny and Keith Florian who would, you know, roll with me. And then it kind of branched out, and I did get to do some rolling and learn a lot. And I was at Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, and I started to feel more included then. Having left there, I think things kind of go back and forth, because I live far from there. It goes back and forth. There are times yes, there are times no.
Yeah. I remember when the first Kira Gracie gi came out, and I think it was the first female cut, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta have that gi. It's the first women's cut gi. It was such a big deal. But you're right, it is the small things. They add up. Anybody else want to jump in and include something?
I'd say when I started too, it was just me at my gym and Rita. And my teammate Rita, like I said, I'm 6'1", like 290 pounds. Rita's 5 foot nothing. So that was the only other woman that I had training. So, you know, and that was it. So we did have that moment, you know, when they say grab a partner and all the guys would pair up, and you're supposed to go by your size, but you know, we're just looking at each other like, oh, I guess it's me and you then, hun. And we went to the first Girls and Gis they had in Florida. That's when the first time I saw like all these women on the mat at once. And then through that, I made connections with Melissa Lawson, and she was a super heavy like female. And, you know, this was within my first year of training. So I thought I was a unicorn. I just didn't think anyone else existed over 5'8" female jiu-jitsu, because I just hadn't seen any yet. And it was between Rita being like extremely personable and like forcing me to be introduced to every woman I came across, and then Melissa, I think she was a brown belt at the time, taking like I will forever be grateful for her, because she didn't have to do this, but she took a personal interest in me invited me to her gym, like made sure I felt comfortable there. And, you know, it's 5-6 years later and I still go over there to cross train. And she has a group of women who are all like larger women who train there too. But like, it's so easy to get caught up in the competition aspect that sometimes women, even women within the sport, don't want to train with you. And like I said, this is someone who, she didn't know me other than she looked at me, looked me up and down, was like, oh, you got to come and roll with me. And like I said, I'd forever feel grateful for that, because I don't know, not that my gym isn't a great gym, but I don't know how far my development would have been if someone else didn't, you know, make me feel included, as for my size, because I still am. I'm on the island on my own in most regards.
So can I piggyback onto that real quick, Torrie? I just wanted to say, one of the things that I try to do and that I know Bernadette does, and one of the things that I think is different nowadays, let me preface this by saying I had a lot of men in my jiu-jitsu career who supported me. So there were plenty who looked askance, there were plenty who did the Ds, like you said, Bernadette, but there were plenty who took an interest and who did exactly what you said Melissa did, Torrie. And that's a difference now, is that I think people like me and Bernadette and other women who run gyms and are in positions of leadership, we can turn around and try to extend a hand to the women who are coming after us. And that's something that I try to do. I don't know if I'm successful all the time, but it's something that it gives me joy to be able to do that for other people. And to know that maybe someone, whether it's a woman or whether it's you know, a person who might not think that they belonged in jiu-jitsu but wanted to give it a try, maybe they would have a different experience than the challenges that I had coming up. They'll still have challenges, but maybe not the kinds that I had.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's the same philosophy, right? You have a child and you want their life to be better than yours. I kind of take that same philosophy into jiu-jitsu, and my journey is that I want the next generation to have it easier than we had it. But I think it's also too important for them to know what we've had to go through, right? Because that gives them an idea of how far we've come and how much further we can go. Did you want to add it?
Agree. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Avery.
That's actually something that I've really noticed, even like, I think I've been training 8 years now, so like it's relatively nothing. But I've noticed that just the culture of unity within women's jiu-jitsu has increased a lot since then. And I know my jiu-jitsu upbringing was a bit different because I actually started in Costa Rica. And so that was like the first 3 years of my training. And so I know that's a very different experience from, you know, starting as a white belt in the US. But even then, and even coming back over to the States, I noticed there was a bit more of like a competition. I always say it's like a lioness thing. Like, this is my pride. And, you know, if another woman comes in, it's like, no, like, these are my boys. This is my team. And like, I've worked so hard. Yeah, exactly. Like, I've worked so hard to get here. I had to, you know, scrape my way up, and it shouldn't be like that instinct kind of hits you. And it's like, no, you should have to work for that too. And it's like, I had to fight that out of my system. I never acted on it, but like, I felt that inside me, and I would see it in a lot of other women as well. And I think I haven't seen that as much in recent years. Like, it used to be I'd go into a gym and all the girls would be like, oh no, like I would be almost ostracized real quick. And now it's not like that. It could just be because like now I'm a purple belt and I'm more respected, but it feels like there has been a significant shift in how we welcome other women into the sport, which I think is great.
I think I have to make a really concerted effort to do that, because in my gym, if we saw a new girl come in, we're like, who is that? And so I was a part of that. And now I understand that in order to grow the sport, we have to bring them in, because I think some of the mentalities in gym as a whole, I think it kind of drives that too. I think some of the guys drive that kind of competition.
Oh yeah.
It's incumbent on us to bring each other in and to grow each other. And that's the unfortunate thing about it. And I wanted to share an experience I had at my first Girls and Gis. You know, they were pairing off partners and I was the last one there. And I'm like, I'm a fucking beast, man. Why is nobody picking me? finally there was a black belt with maybe her 12-year-old daughter. She's like, you can come with us. I was like, thank God, you know? And so I think we have to, and I do this too with girls and geese. I'm not going to see anybody standing on a wall. You are stuck with me all day. And I think we all have to do that a lot more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, like, in my old academy, it was me. It was the same thing. I was Rita. It was me, and then this woman who was like 6 foot tall, who was like the only other woman in the academy. Was and so I was always kind of like the welcoming wagon, like, hey Shama, pair up with this new girl. Hey Shama, pair. And I remember some days I'd be like, I just want to roll. Like, I just came here to train today. I didn't come here to like recruit women for your school. But once I started realizing, like, oh, if I help them, then I got more training partners. Then I can make this academy more inclusive. I can get these guys behind issues that are related to us and supporting us. If there's more of them, if it's not just me being like, hey guys, can we clean up the locker or the changing room that we both share so it's not like trashed, or, you know, like, let's make it more women friendly. And so for me personally, I see it as a responsibility, not only for us to grow the sport for everyone's sake, but hey, I want more training partners. And I hope that more women adopt that kind of philosophy at least. But
well, and another thing, go ahead.
You can go.
I was saying, I've definitely had that moment where, like, I felt like I'm the welcome wagon. I was like, oh, I needed to roll today. I just wanted to roll today. But then I was like, okay, well, I want to roll, but this is a person who's coming into, like, I think we can all remember, like, that first day you get onto the mat, it's nerve-wracking enough. And then if you're, we're so close to each other in jiu-jitsu. So I feel like any comfort you can afford to another woman, I kind of feel like that's just a thing we need to do, because it's already difficult enough to be that basically on top of a stranger. And for me, it was uncomfortable for me to be that close to a man that I did not know right off the bat. So I was like, okay, well, if it's going to cost me 10, 15, 20 minutes of this class, I'll pull some of the guys afterwards and roll, if that means that person got a good introduction to the sport.
That's awesome.
I think one of the things I do is I might not go all the time, because if it's in a school where I'm teaching, that's where I will do that, you know, make sure people are comfortable. If it's somewhere where I'm training, which is usually different, I don't reach right away. I step back and I watch and I see, because I don't want to take away from the person their ability to step forward and get past that initial anxiety onto the mat. And then if it's not working, and sometimes, quite honestly, people have tears in their eyes when they step on, then that's the point where I'll intervene and, you know, and come in and, you know, and maybe, but you have to, for me, at least in my area, you have to gauge some, because not everybody wants you there. You know, and so you have to, you know, there's a gauge, there's a back and forth, a non-verbal language, that body language, you know, it's more body language than verbal language going on. And so you have to kind of get a pulse of the person before you approach them. And that's male and female, and everybody else, you know, so because we don't know who's there, but I tend to go to that mat when it's in my, to get that person when they're coming into where I teach people, but I sit back and I hang back if it's just a place that I'm training at, because I want to see what happens, you know, and then I can step in if nothing happens, or if the person is just left there alone, because I also don't want to overstep the professor and the teaching position at that place where I might be.
I think that I didn't realize that I do the same thing, Bernadette, until you articulated it that way. One of the other things that I think I'm able to do as an instructor now is I can sort of taking what Bernadette does in terms of observing a class, I can also recruit some of the, I don't want to say trustworthy, but some of the more aware male training partners and pair them with a brand new woman. And so in that way, I can convey to, sometimes non-verbally, right, Bernadette, but I can convey to the new woman, this guy's okay. Work with him, you guys, you'll be able to work together. And then you also normalize the idea that everybody brings everybody up. And so again, I think, and not because like I think it was you saying, Torrie, that a lot of times people don't act maliciously, but I don't think that male instructors necessarily would be as attuned to that as someone like me, as someone like Bernadette, because we lived it, right? So we're all living it. We're all trying to make it better. But if we can use that, again, if we can use that, that leadership that we've had the opportunity, all of us have had the opportunity to develop over the years, then we can normalize women in jiu-jitsu, we can normalize lots of groups in jiu-jitsu, and we can normalize that everybody helps each other. It isn't just, there's a new woman, that means, the 5-foot new woman, Torrie, you got to work with her because you're the woman. That's not how that needs to work. Maybe there's a blue belt who's 5 feet tall, a guy, super fun to work with, and you pair them together. And that's how you normal. I'm repeating myself now, but I'm old, so that's what I do.
Val, I just wanted to add on to that. If it's a teenager or younger, and I have someone coming into class, I actually have a little bit of a different routine than I do with adults. And I actually ask them to come in with their parents. And I describe to them the places that can be touched in this sport that may feel uncomfortable to them because they may not have looked at the whole sport because coming in. So I do go over it with parents, and I say, sometimes these areas are touched, and I'd say private areas are touched, and it's not on purpose. It's the way the rolling is. We're body on body. Are you comfortable with your child being in that position? Sometimes someone is sitting on top of your child. Are you comfortable with her having someone, male, female, and everybody in between and all around, sitting on and staying on your child? Do you mind her doing that to other people? When we talk about chokes, so sometimes there is going to be something uncomfortable with the way that she feels or he feels because there's a hand, there's a barrel circumference around their neck, right? We have all here, and they may feel like they can't breathe. So I want to know if you're okay. Does your child panic in these situations? So these things, I think, are how we continue to talk to young ones coming in, and for me, and their parents, because I don't know where anyone is coming from, but I do usually find out within the first 2 weeks, and that may be a topic for another day, but it definitely, the reasons people come into this vary greatly. Everybody is not here because they want to go to Pan Ams and be a champion. Somebody's here because something happened. Somebody is here because they could not defend themselves. Somebody is here because they might feel guilty for not being able to defend themselves. And on the story goes. It's not always that, but a lot of times people come after, and there is something else to the reason that they're suddenly showing up at the door. And a lot of times those people are women. And a lot of times that issue is sexual abuse or inappropriate touching. Just put it out there.
I actually really like that you do that, because I've noticed that I'll teach a competition class on the weekend, and I would notice even like teen boys, sometimes they them, they almost too respectful, but they kind of don't know. Like I literally had my instructor's son, he's grown up in jiu-jitsu. The first time I rolled with him, he was just like this, because he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to be inappropriate. So I really like that idea of, especially with the teens and younger, explaining to them like, hey, I might have to touch your leg here, or I might be here, and that's okay. But if you're not okay with it, let us know.
Right.
I think a lot of time we get thrown into the deep end, and it's like, adapt. You'll be, it's not adapt. But I think that's a very good point, that like some people need to be talked through and explained before they experience it, in case it triggers something, or in case they freak out.
And a parent might freak out. And And so so this is why I add parents all the way always to that equation. And I know a lot of people don't allow parents to sit in. And I do allow them to pull a chair in and sit in. I go over the guidelines and the rules and who's in charge, and you're not cheerleading, you're watching, and you can be excused from the room if you're being inappropriate. But I understand that there's a discomfort when people are touching your young lady or your young man too. But we're talking about wearing girls and gis right now, so forgive me if I'm talking about just girls. But that can be an uncomfortable situation for a parent too. And so it's not just the child, it's the parent too, because they go home in that car together. And it's their conversation that happens, whether they stay or not, in the sport.
And I think it's a good point too, that some of these issues are not just women's or female issues, that it does apply to both sexes. It's not just one-sided in that.
Those are all really good points. I think earlier we mentioned that the BJJ community is part and parcel of our social landscape. I just don't think that BJJ is powerful enough to break down all of the barriers that we've seen in recent events. And current events kind of indicate that we have major social inequality issues. How do these issues impact the dynamics and culture in BJJ? And do you ladies think that we can fix it at all? Is there?
I'm frustrated.
Yes.
I'm frustrated. And I have not stepped. There are places where I can go and we can't roll yet, but we could train. And I have deliberately stepped back because I will tell you honestly, I'd rather know who the demon is in the room than not know who it is. So I'm glad you put yourself out there, because now you and I, we can do our thing. You can go over there and I can go over here, or we can come together, because what I do is I put it, when I see something and I'm tagged on it, I also put, talk to me. Mm-hmm. But I want to know who you are, because I'm not turning my back on you.
Oh, there's going to be some real awkward open mats coming up soon when the world gets back going. Well, it's the same thing. Everyone's very opinionated and bold and ready to put their opinion out there. But when I DM them asking for further discussion, because my whole thing is, I'm an adult. We're all grown-ass people. Speak to me like an adult and like you have some sense. Now, I can have a full discussion with someone, but like I don't feel like we don't have to put our business out in the world unless you want to take it there. Because I have no problem being petty. I just prefer not to. So my thing is, like, I think, and I wrote a post about this a couple weeks ago. I think when I got into jiu-jitsu, I had this ideal of the martial artist, of like how they're good and they have good intentions. They're just inherently better people. But just like with everything else, they are just people with the same faults in everything. So we have this hero worshiping that disgusts me, honestly, because at the end of the day, being jiu-jitsu has nothing to do with any other aspect of your life besides jiu-jitsu. We all know there are jerks on the mat. Just because this jerk has a world medal around their neck doesn't make them any more important than the white belt that just rolled in. So what's frustrating for me as like a Black woman is seeing all of these other, I hate to just pull all the men because it's not just men, but there's a lot of men like planting their flag and then showing videos from these other people, like, see what they said. Like, I wasn't listening to them yesterday. Why am I going to listen to them today when they're like outwardly against who I am as a person? So this whole, I think, like with the current state, people have really shown their true colors. We've been kind of hidden under this veil of like, yay, jiu-jitsu, my friends, my partners coming up. And this idea that, oh, we're all family here and everything's nice and cuddly and warm. And then we took 2 steps back and you realize these are not the people you thought who had your back that had your back. Because when something as simple as saying that you're a valid person and you should be protected, if they want to give you, a 10-paragraph response on how you're wrong, not about how you should feel valid in your feelings, but what you are feeling as a person who has experienced this thing is wrong. To me, that tells me you do not have my back. And now I don't feel safe rolling with you, because I don't know if you're going to take this as a way to like prove a point and put a stamp, like people are petty. So now I no longer feel safe with you. So we're just associates who happen to inhabit the same space.
And I don't know how old you are. You guys know how old I am, but I'm remembering that I was raised in the 60s. I was born and raised in the beginning of the 60s. And so my outlook is a little bit different because I came up in the civil rights era, which one of the reasons I picked up a book in 6th or 7th grade called Every Boy's Judo. And I had to sneak and get it and change the weekly reader around. I probably told the story to people before, but because I was afraid, because white men would come as I was walking from school, whether I was alone or with other kids, and drop off teenage boys to beat us up. I learned 2 things. I had to learn how to fight and I had to learn how to run. And I did them both well. So the timing is a little bit different of our coming into the world. So my eyes perhaps have been open longer and looking and seeing. So some of these things don't surprise me. They just don't, because that's where I came from. I had to come through that. That's my story. My story is either get your butt kicked, and get spit on and cans thrown at you, or you learn how to run to get to a safe place, or you learn how to fight when they drop them off. And that there was nothing else to do. There was nobody coming to get me. There was nobody waving because the person in that car was just like the one that was in the truck. So for some of us, it's a necessity to know how to fight, to know the self-defense. We talk a lot in this sport about the competition and not the self-defense. And if there's one thing I think we could do for women, it's really teach the self-defense for everybody in our classes, and women being broadly anybody, any gender, all the things. Teach the self-defense. Do not miss it, because you need to know, I believe, and I said this to a very wonderful professor, we don't want to know anybody's stories. We just want to do jiu-jitsu. How do you train me how to take care of myself if I'm trying to tell you my story and you can't hear it? We're not only defending ourselves from people who are in the bar and drunk. And sometimes that's what jiu-jitsu does. We're only defending ourselves from the drunk in the bar room, or, and that's not where most of us are doing it. How about at home? Sometimes this happens too. So how about in the street? How about other places? How about right here on your mat? And if you think it doesn't happen, it does. I've been there. And the self-defense part of jiu-jitsu, whether you call it Brazilian or whether you call it something else, there are techniques in there that are packaged, renamed, but still good.
This is something that I'm super passionate about as well. And just in terms of how self-defense in women's jiu-jitsu is taught. Like I used to be at a gym where they just wanted to brand the women's classes, which I taught, as women's self-defense. And I said, well, that's not what we're teaching right now. Like, we're teaching gi jiu-jitsu, and like, it's not the same. And so I took a long, hard look and said, okay, what does women's self-defense really mean? And as you know, a lot of us know, as Bernadette touched on, it's not about the person hiding in the bushes. It's about the person at home. It's about, like she said, the teammate, who gets too close to you, or, people who are close to you and take advantage of you. And so I would sometimes, after class, I would talk to the women in the class about, here's what to look for as red flags at home, or if you're on a date with somebody, this is a red flag, because like, where else are they going to learn it? Self-defense isn't just about, it's not just about technique. It's not just about being able to beat someone up. It's being able to recognize those signs before something happens. And then if you take another look at that and look inside your own gym, and that, it's not just, it shouldn't just be your own responsibility. It should be the responsibility of your teammates. If somebody's saying something that suggests they might be a danger to other people, if they're saying racist things and you have people of color in your gym, like, that's not a safe person to roll with, and then like, going beyond that, if you know that someone is a danger, like I've asked this myself when I've seen, people in this over the past few months saying some pretty horrendous stuff, like, what's my responsibility as someone who's been training for a hot minute, you know, like, and there have been some people where I'm like, I'm not rolling with that person again, not because of any like pettiness in my own heart, although that is certainly there. But like, I don't want to help you get better at jiu-jitsu if I'm worried you're going to hurt somebody else, you know? So there's a few people where I'm like, if they ask me to roll again, I'm going to say, no, thanks. You know, like it doesn't have to be a thing, but you know, as a teammate, if you're good at a sport that involves beating other people up, and you know that somebody probably shouldn't know how to beat other people up, like it's kind of up to you to say, you know, I'm not going to have a part in that. I'm going to make other people aware of that. You know, like it's not just about being able to choke people, being able to break people's arms. Like there's so much that gets involved in women's self-defense or just self-defense in general. And I think it needs to be addressed on a deeper level.
Sure. So within your gyms, have you guys had to address anything, whether it's regarding your sex, sexuality, color, any of those things here lately in light of our current events? Because this country is in turmoil and we don't just check that stuff right outside the jiu-jitsu gym doors. That stuff's in there. So I wonder if you guys have had any instances where you've had to check somebody really quick.
I haven't been back training yet, to be honest. I haven't trained since March. I'm trying to get in next week, but I'm waiting for my COVID test to come through. But what I've noticed is some of the people who I've been friendly with in the past, who when everything first started out, were very quick to comment, because if anyone's on my page, they know I have very strong opinions. I'm never disrespectful, but I will stand by every single thing I say online, on a phone, to your face. I'm not going to check myself for anyone.
Torrie, I gotta tell you, I go in for my daily Torrie fix on Facebook. I gotta see what's going on.
Well, but you see, people, the majority of people who do that, they're perfectly fine. There's always one or two people. And what I've noticed is those people have started, and these are people who I've known for years, have stopped commenting and no longer communicate with me in other aspects. And I know these people, we are going to see each other soon. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned is I feel like they've come to the understanding that like, we are going to have words and they don't want to add to it, or they're unaware of where we stand. Okay. And they're kind of, I'm not saying they're afraid, they don't want to say anything, but what I said coming into 2020, not knowing how clear it was going to be, is like, I will no longer put my own self in an uncomfortable place for the comfort of others. Yeah. I feel like that's the thing that we tend to do as women, especially, is we will carry the burden and feel awkward in certain situations because we want the group to feel okay. We want everyone else to be okay. Like I said, I train in Eustis, Florida. It is one of the most, it's very rural. There's 2 gyms in the whole area. I'm one of the only people of color in my gym. I'm the only African-American in my gym. I'm the only person in the LGBT community in my gym. It's very easy for things to get said or done, mostly unmaliciously, but for things to just get brought up from that place of ignorance we're talking about, that I would let 2-3 years ago, I would have let slide, that I don't anymore. And I think some people feel like when you're correcting them, because that's what we're doing, we're correcting a wrong action, a wrong behavior, and people correct me and it's fine. I feel like when we say like, hey, you're aware of what you're saying is offensive, and I will tell you why it's offensive, and like a little bit behind it, it's not just a simple statement, they feel like we're personally attacking them, but I'm attacking their language. And I feel like that conversation is a conversation I'm about to have for the rest of the year, because if anything now, I feel like I've gotten even more firmly, I believe that like we shouldn't let these little instances slide anymore, because that's when it becomes an institutional behavior within your gym. And we don't think about it because it's so in the background. But when you really stop and think about some of the things that get said without a second thought, it's deeply offensive. And if I'm aware of that, how will like someone else who just comes to our gym, like say someone comes from a bigger city, they come down here, you think they're not going to notice that? And reputations are everything. People will learn very quickly if you have a space that is open or not. And for a gym that we've worked so hard to weed out those bad people and those negative forces. Like my coach is like, nah, you can't come here anymore. I'm not going to let that continue to spread, even by the littlest of things.
I think there's still, and thank you, and I think there's still a fear in the Black community, and I'll say Latino and Latina community also. I think there's still a fear in some areas that people can't say what they want to say or defend themselves and still be part of the team. So what's happened is this splintering, and I've noticed it. So, and it's closed. There are sites just for Black people in Jiu-Jitsu that nobody else ain't gonna know about because it's just to support Black people in Jiu-Jitsu. And I sit back and I say, where are we with being inclusive if people feel so uncomfortable that they can't even talk in the mainstream anymore? That they have to talk about how to protect themselves in their gym, that they have to go directly or go away from their leadership, that they expected to be better and either confront it or pack up their duffel bags and go somewhere else. So it's a complicated quandary because people want to play and do jiu-jitsu, but people also know that they're on the outside, they're welcome. On the outside, their money is welcome, but they may not be welcome.
Do you see that a lot, Val?
Yes.
Wow.
I could point you to 3 sites that's all Black people.
Okay.
One of the things that I wanted to say, and again, this is from my perspective and my beliefs about my responsibility as a woman who has some leadership in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Along those lines, just a lot of what people have been saying, I just had a couple thoughts that I wanted to share. So, Torrie, you talked about how you will check people's language or you'll check their behavior and they'll get upset or defensive. And for anybody, and again, this is something that each individual person has to take on themselves, but there's a book called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. One of the things just to back up, one of the things in the wake of everything that's going on is that I think that it's my personal responsibility to educate myself as much as I can. So one of the things that I have done, happy to share with any of the listeners, but I'm trying to compile resources, books, videos, theorists, researchers who speak to all of these issues and are much smarter about them than I am. White Fragility is, I think it's a must read for any white person. I think that if you care about making the world a better place, then we need to understand how we're contributing to shutting down conversation. And this is a really good first step for that. Another thing that I wanted to mention, Sharicka, it's so interesting how the conversation has gone. You were asking what kinds of things we've seen recently. And I'm in everybody's boat in that I haven't been training, but I have been thinking deeply about the kind of message I want to send when I do go back to training and when I do go back to teaching. And, I'm the first to admit, I'm just trying to figure things out, but like hashtags, do I post a set of appropriate actions in my classes? Do I, do a survey of students who are going to come to my classes to find out what's going to make them feel comfortable and included? But these are the kinds of things that I think I, as a leader, have a responsibility at least to try to do. And I won't get them right, and there will always be room for improvement. But my goal is to fail a little bit less tomorrow at this than I do today. And what I hope is that there are more reachable people in my gym than there are people who are just set in their ways, and that they're waiting for someone to share these kinds of messages and to show this kind of leadership. So
thank you for saying you're educating yourself, because a lot of people, I've been reached out to a lot of people, and this isn't me shaming them or anything, because I'm fine with speaking with people, but we are not Black Siri. We are not here to give you a list of resources of this. Like, we can, but at the same time, just how like I had to educate myself about any number of topics. I took a personal interest and did that. You're doing that now, Val. You're going on and educating yourself about issues that it may not have occurred to you first. I feel like it's not that hard to do, but so few people want to take that step. It almost seems like they feel like they don't have to do that other people should guide them around the road of inclusion, which I just don't understand. So thank you for actually saying, like, I am self-educating. I'm not going to like, hey, random Black person, what can I do for you? Like, we like that, but at the same time, please stop it.
Well, and I hesitated to say this because I don't want it to make it sound like I'm tooting my own horn, because I know like but listen, if I can encourage any, like, one other white person to start taking a look at some of these issues, then reach out to me. I mean, again, I don't know a lot of answers, but I'm trying, like you said, Torrie, to educate myself. And like you said, I mean, okay, if this were not the age of Google and the age of where everything, I mean, I got my phone right here, I can start to do some of this research on my own. And I think, again, that as someone who has actively decided that she wants to be part of the solution, that's part of my responsibility.
One of the things I ask my students, and I have some general students, but I have some very intimate students that I've been with for many, many years. And we've been having these conversations for the last 9 years, so in bits and pieces, because we talk about a lot of things, because I believe that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu isn't just go in and train, because we always talk about helping people with their mindset, whatever it is. It could be substance abuse, it could be anything. So I think we've had these conversations. And one of the things I've asked them to do, especially in the last couple of months, is before you post something, I appreciate your opinion, but do the research that's opposite of your opinion and then come back. You may still have the same opinion, but at least you will have done something to educate yourself, and then you can make an informed decision before you throw yourself out there. And I think it's important if you have students that will listen to that, are intimate with that. But I don't believe it all starts 3 months ago either. No. You have to have done some things to get there, so that you have people who are listening and sharing. And so I'm blessed in that way, even in being 99% white New Hampshire, that there are people, and I do have students that are going to listen. I'll tell you another little story. Is I teach at a couple of places, and one in particular, the person said, come teach for me, yada, yada, many years ago. And I said, no. And then he said, why do you keep telling me no? And I said, because I fear that you will not get the business that you're looking for. Well, you're a Black belt, it's gonna happen. And I said, no, I'm a Black woman. And it might not happen the way you think it is. So either you will get used to having a small group that really knows jiu-jitsu, or you should think about bringing someone else in, because it's not going to play out the same. No matter how much credentials I have, it will not play out the same. It just doesn't. And some of us know that someone could come in. I've seen people come in and walk up to my brown belt. He's not brown belt yet, but he will be in a week. Walk up to him and be like, oh, you're the teacher, No, that's the teacher. Oh. And then they're out the door, They might stay for the class and get very uncomfortable and they leave. Whether that's female or being Black, I'm not sure. But I believe it's a combination of both. You are lower than me. You cannot tell me what to do, not even a sport that I don't know.
That's sad.
Intersectionality.
That's reality.
Yeah.
So do you guys see the parallels between people of color, LGBTQ community, and women? And if so, what are the parallels? Because I think there probably are some major differences, but what are the things that you can compare that you, Torrie, as a Black woman, would also go through being a lesbian woman as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like in both situations, people don't want you to tell them if you're feeling uncomfortable. They want to pretend that it's not really there and that you're making it into a bigger issue than it is.
Oh, gaslight.
Gaslight all day. And to the point where then they have you think to yourself, like, am I making that big of a deal? Is it really? And I'm like, no, don't let them turn this around on you. Yeah. I think even though we've gotten more inclusive, and especially like we're in the States, I think we still have to remember that most of our jiu-jitsu schools here are ran by white men who, in this country, everything has been set up in a certain way that they expect other people and other minorities to act and behave in a certain way. Again, I am not out here saying all white men are the devil and they're out to get us all. What I'm saying is that they were brought up in a certain way to have a certain command of a room, and others are expected to follow them with little to no questioning. And then what you see is everyone knows, like, you go to the gym, you have like your coach. Your coach is probably the most chill person there. There's this level of other dudes who think that they're the spokespeople and they can kind of run stuff. And a lot of times those are the ones that you got to check, because then they think they're the people. But they are the ones setting the culture, and they're setting it because they feel like, for some reason, again, they could be a lower belt than me. They can feel that they are somehow, I'm a purple belt, but they can be a blue belt or a white belt who's been there for a couple of years. And somehow they feel like their voice is supposed to be louder or stronger than mine in certain circumstances. So I feel like there needs to be a true understanding of what we were talking about when we're talking about like institutional racism and institutional behaviors, in that it is ingrained not just in our large society and police force and all that, but in other institutions like education and even in the jiu-jitsu system. So when I tell someone that I am feeling personally attacked, or I'm feeling, and like I said, I've been extremely fortunate that like I haven't had to feel that much stuff at my home gym, but I have definitely gone to other places where I knew as soon as I stepped on that mat, I'm going to do my work and I'm getting off, because I know that if I say anything, I'm just listening to people in the background. I gym travel a lot. I was listening. I was like, yeah, they're not going to like what I have to say on this topic. So most time people are people are chill with me because I'm a happy person. I'm a good one. I'm smiling. I'm polite. I'm friendly. I don't rock the boat when you first meet me, but as I'm growing more into my voice, people are starting to realize, like, uh-oh, she is going to say something.
Here comes
so, yeah, now here Torrie goes again. But I feel like that's something that we have to do. So, again, I've been fortunate in my gym that people haven't outright said something about being Black or being gay. It was more like they're mentioning a comment or a statement about Black people or about gay people, and they somehow forget that Torrie is both a Black and a gay person. So Torrie, as a Black and a gay person, is going to have something to say about it. And they're like, oh, well, we're not talking about you. No, you are talking about me, because I am a part of that community. So they want to other me in a way, but they also want to keep me included in the group. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I used to be a lot more passive and quiet, but I feel like now I have to almost be like super Black and super gay so they don't forget. So they are aware of what they're saying. I am that person. Like, when you say a gay person is this, you're saying that Torrie is this. And if you can equate, like, you saying this gay person is, I wouldn't want, like, someone actually is like, I wouldn't want a gay person around my kids. And I was like, so you don't want me around your kids? Like, what are you talking about? Torrie's like, I am a gay person. So if you're saying that all gay people shouldn't be around kids, you're saying that you don't want me around your children and you don't want me around you. And when you say that to them, they start to feel bad. And I feel like, good, you should feel bad. Because what you're saying right now is you're putting all of us in a group, and it's a shitty thing to do.
Yeah.
That sounds exhausting.
Oh, it is.
What are your thoughts, Averi? What have you seen?
Oh, I've just, I've become a lot more aware of how many people aren't really aware that they are racist or homophobic or transphobic. And I think part of it has come from the fact that I'm Jewish, and I'm bi/pansexual, but like I'm not openly Jewish. Like my last name is from my dad's side, obviously, and my partner currently is a man. And so a lot of people don't know that. And so they'll say things like, just like how people don't really realize that, Torrie's a gay woman. Well, that they'll say things in front of me and assume it's okay. And I'm like, oh, that's not okay. And they don't see that, oh, wait, that's a little homophobic, that's a little anti-Semitic. And they genuinely believe that it's not that. And I know in the past, I grew up in a very, very white area. And I know when I was in high school, I had a few, I guess, more problematic views like that too. And I thought, oh, well, I'm not racist. I don't walk around wearing a KKK hood. I would never say the N-word. But you have these internalized thoughts or, things like that you have to actively unlearn when you grow up in an environment like that. And, just like Val did, I've, done a lot of my own education. And thankfully I've had a lot of good people in my life who have also, stepped in to be like, hey, I know you don't think that this is problematic, but here's why it is. And, I've been blessed to have those people in my life, but I look around, I'm like, not everyone has had that. And it's not because they're bad people, or it's not because they're trying to be bad people. They just don't know better. And so I guess my kind of vetting process for these people has been like, are you trying to know better? If I give you a book recommendation, to be actively anti-racist, are you going to take that? Or are you going to, just brush it off? So yeah, I've seen it in little ways. It obviously hasn't affected me as much as it would someone, like Torrie, who fits into a lot of those demographics very openly. But it's been very eye-opening to see, and you don't expect that from a friend.
I really appreciate you. Sometimes I see these Facebook posts in the comments. I'm like, I'm about to start, bitch. And here comes Averi. I'm like, thank God. I feel like if it comes from you being a white woman, it's going to be received better than me, who's the one feeling
the angry Black woman.
Yeah, and I hate that. I hate that so much. But that's, again, something that I've had to really wake up to in the past few years. I used to think, oh, that's not my battle to fight, and then you realize this should be all our fight. You know what I mean? We are all part of some group, and it's like that famous quote, then they came for me and there was no one left to fight for me. And it just bothers me that that's even a necessary thing. But that's also been something that I've been trying to push people to do, is even if it doesn't affect you personally, it affects someone else, have some empathy, be that person who recognizes your privilege and your perceived power in the world and speak up where you can.
And along those lines, Averi and Sharicka, I think that is where one of the parallels is, where, Averi, you were talking about how you can be an ally for people of color. And this is an example of where there is a parallel with being a woman in Jiu-Jitsu, where if we can get men to be our allies, unfortunately, sometimes they're listened to more than we are as women. And, needless to say, that is incredibly frustrating as well. The other thing I wanted to say is, Averi, you were also talking about what I have learned in my education of myself is implicit bias. And I think that many of us experience this. Well, I'm not part of the problem, so that means I'm part of the solution, and that is absolutely not the case. And so that's something that that each of us sort of needs to do our own reckoning with. And like you said, Averi, are we the person who is reachable, or are we the person who is so uncomfortable with discomfort that we're not willing to engage? Because the fact of the matter is, people of color, trans people, people in the LGBTQ plus in that community, women have all had to deal with discomfort in varying levels. And it isn't fair that only those groups are the ones that are shouldering and experiencing that discomfort. We all have to take on some of it from our positions of privilege so that we can get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to say, Sharicka, you asked about those 3 specific groups. And one of the things that I see is, and I'm trying to think about how to work with it, is that it's not just, and we've been talking about white people, white men, right? And I guess we can say white men, But in jiu-jitsu, there's a cultural thing that happens where people hear from other places that have very specific ways the culture runs where they are, and then bringing it here, where there might be a little bit of way to talk to certain people. It gets reinforced if those people are leaders coming from their own backgrounds, saying what they believe to be true from their countries, not just Brazil, but other places, but Brazil. And then it becomes part of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community. One of the things I've learned about Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular, is no one wants to disappoint or not be on the same side as their coach or their professor, their sensei, whatever you call it. And that's where people start to be for me, and it may be a strong way of saying it, they're indoctrinated into something that they may not have gone that far in before, but because it's okay with someone that's at the UFC, then let me just go ahead and join on the bandwagon of things. Now, I have to say, there are people who are counter to that and who are calling people out very bravely and courageously and saying, you, professor, at the top of the line, I'm disappointed in you. And I've appreciated not having, because I get tired of being the only one sometimes. And it feels like the only one, and I might not be, but there's only 3 of us here. So, so people are speaking out. And what I really loved is that people from the sidelines are speaking out. So they may not be directly in any jiu-jitsu class, but they may be a parent sitting on the side, and they're adding in how they want their kids to be raised. And so I appreciate that that's happening. And I think those all tie in, whether it's the way you think about women, whether it's the way you think about race, whether you think about gender, sexual orientation, all of that stuff, is that there's an influence of masculinity, part from the United States, but part not from the United States. And that, and I don't know what to do with that at this point, but I know that there's something there.
That's a good point.
So you guys, when we talk about inclusiveness in jiu-jitsu, I think that people forget we're a microcosm of our nation, which has so many problems, and they don't just check themselves at the door, which I said earlier. I know our gym owner, he makes it a point not to get involved in politics or religion. Honestly, I think that's smart for business, but I do think that they need to speak up when it's an issue of morality and human value. And I also think that some of these big name athletes with these huge platforms should also speak out. Do they have a responsibility? Do these big name athletes have a responsibility to speak up?
So I will say, we wish that they would have that responsibility, but them being human, they may not and may believe exactly what they're doing. And that I don't want to ever leave aside, is they may be acting just the way that they are because the layers are pulled back. This is who I am. And I'm okay with seeing what I don't like. I'd rather see it than it to be hidden and to find out later. So for me, I can't say that they're not doing that. I don't like what they're doing, but they might be showing you exactly who they are. Who is it? Maya Angelou said, when somebody shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Mm-hmm. You would have probably had some cues coming down the line if we paid close attention and picked up on those smaller things. And and I don't know if Claudia is the one with the sexual allegation.
Yeah, she is.
This issue, it bothers me tremendously because I've seen women come against women, and we have to understand that different people have different ways of looking at things. But I don't like the idea of women being blamed for being assaulted. That really gets under my skin. I've been told for the last 15, 20 years, I've gone to, I've had workshops and I was like, let's talk this out. I've been to big conference. You can't say that. All the martial artists are going to get upset. It's because they're doing it.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So Sharicka, you had talked about the humanity and the morality aspects of things, and I that really resonated with me. One of the things that in my dream world, one of the things that I think is interesting is watching the professionalization of any activity. So, for instance, I'm a professional coach, and over time, it used to be that you could hang your shingle, you could say I'm a coach, and now there are certification bodies, there are tests you need to take, there are ethical standards you need to meet. And in my dream world, I would love to see some sort of code of ethics, some sort of professionalization of the sport of jiu-jitsu. And there, you hear people saying, well, that'll never work. And all I can think to myself, and, granted, I haven't worked it through, but all I can think to myself when I hear people say that'll never work is, translation, you don't want to have to do that. Yep. And that would require all of us to check ourselves. But man, if I had a friend who was traveling the country, decided that she wanted to train here, there, and everywhere, I would turn her to the places that had decided they were going to follow a code of ethics of some kind, and that they were going to opt into a situation, a community that polices itself. And I don't think we're there yet. I would love to see that happen. So anyway, but your comments about morality, the morality and the humanity of what we do, it really resonated with me, and I think that's always got to be front and center.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah. I think it's quite insane that we have to say that we should make a statement about morality and humanity, and that it's controversial. Like, to me, someone's putting I literally have there are people who own gyms who don't want to use the hashtag Black Lives Matter because they feel like they're going to isolate a huge chunk of their population. Okay, fine. Don't say Black Lives Matter, whatever. I have feelings about it. I'll let that one go. If it is so hard for you to put a simple statement of inclusion out, why am I even dealing with you? I have a list of gyms that I will no longer go to for something as simple as that. Saying that we have a diverse community and we accept everyone, that is very simple to say. And I don't want you just to say it. I want you to uphold it. I am telling you don't be a jackass. Treat people with a baseline of decency and common respect. That shouldn't be controversial. That shouldn't be hard. But for some reason, if you ask someone to add a statement of inclusion, to say even something like, through different groups, I realized again, being in the LGBTQ community, there are people who train the sport who can't go from gym to gym because they don't feel safe. But if you ask a gym to say that you are inclusive in that way, all of a sudden they accuse you of wanting them to become political. But it's not. It's just saying that you're safe to train here. All these statements are just saying that you are safe here and you are valid here and we will protect you while you're rolling. If that is such an issue for you to say, what are you even doing? What? I don't I think I'm a pretty smart person. I truly can't understand why half of these things are as controversial as they are. Yet on the other hand, we will bend, I'm not trying to say F the police, forget military or anything like that. I come from a law enforcement background, a military background from my family. But we do so much for those communities, for the people of autism. We do so much to make sure they feel included, that this is their safe place. We have flags for them. We have rash guards for them. We have all this. But you putting a hashtag and you putting a little part in your, a little statement on your window that we're inclusive, that's somehow too much and that's too political. Get the fuck out of here. That's too much for me. I can't. It bothers me to my core because I just don't understand how that's controversial.
Well, here's
I'm not laughing at your emotion, Torrie. I'm just laughing at the absurdity of it. So
yeah. We had funnily enough, but on the Jiu-Jitsu Times, I put up just a post about a BLM rash guard because I thought it was cool. And if you follow the Jiu-Jitsu Times, there's so much stuff about cops and the military. We're pretty all encompassing, like truly Jiu-Jitsu is for everybody. Like we've worked really hard for that. And so we put up, and it was just like a quick post about like this rash guard, and like the proceeds were going to the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black curriculum, which is a great program in the UK that like boosts Black history in school curriculums. Like none of them should be controversial, but just that post lost us literally hundreds of followers, like 500 angry comments, people demanding I get fired. Like, first of all, I run the page, like try to fire me. But also in like our inbox, like I shouldn't say never, on that particular topic, I have never seen such anger. I'm like, it is the most simple, most basic thing. Like, why is it controversial to say like other people matter, and not that Black people should be considered other in the first place, but that's what these people were looking at it from. Like it was predominantly.
I'm going to be point blank with you, because some people haven't even got it in their head that Black people are human. So let's go that far to it, that some people don't even believe that we should be standing in the same place. Your money is good if it comes in. I can look past a little bit if we're rolling, but don't make my tongue say that thing. Don't make my tongue say that I see you less than me. You're cool while you're in here, but you're never my equal. This is what's happening. This is what's happening in all of these areas that we're talking about. You're not like me. I'm the master thing. And you're not like me, and you're not going to force me to be there. And Black people, you're not even human, so why are you getting in this conversation?
You would have thought I've murdered somebody.
Walk up to me and say, oh, I'm so glad to know that you're human. I said, what the hell you think I am? Am I mineral? Am I plant? Where are we going to go with this? Well, I didn't mean, let's not go there then.
You're right.
With
though.
some of the DMs I've gotten, some of the comments and the messages I've gotten, like I put some people on blast. I think it's funny. I'll just like, oh, you want to DM me? Well, I'll just show everyone what you really think. But you would have thought that I was out here saying, let's kill everyone. Let's burn this bitch to the ground. I don't care. Like you would have thought I was like ready to really just like destroy the world by saying that I support a movement that supports my people. You would think that I am the most malicious person in the world, how some people are coming at me for simply putting happy pride or Black Lives Matter on a hashtag, and like sharing material about it, explaining further on there. Not even anything half as controversial as I could have put. Simple statements they take as a personal attack to their existence when they're actually doing the exact same thing to us. So that goes back to my other things. Like I was ignorant in the idea that martial artists are somehow inherently good when they're not. We are all just people with different activities that we do. And we have, again, it goes back, we have to stop holding certain people on a pedestal that they did not deserve. And I feel like a lot of that's what's happening right now is we had our eyes wide open to certain people, we're like, oh, this is so, no, they're great people. And now we're starting to realize, and we're like, oh, wait, what? No, they've been like this the whole time. We just didn't want to know. Like, and you look back on some of their histories and their searches and everything, like they've had these statements for decades. They've been saying these things for years. We just didn't want to look further in it because it didn't matter at that moment.
Yeah. But I think in jiu-jitsu, we have our blinders on, right? We just want to go there. We just want to train. We want to forget about all the troubles of the world and just train. But is that realistic in going through life? No. It's still there. We're just ignoring it, right?
And I think there's an added layer. Maybe this is an age thing. So you people that are younger than I, please let me know. Is that I remember in the history of reconciliation, what happened is that the Black man became very equal, got to be in legislature by a lot. And then when the Black man started to be able to move forward, the people at that time as white people were very like, uh-oh, they're taking from me. And so when I walk into a gym and I'm not sure about my environment, I'm saying I wear a shirt that says, I got my own back, because I know where the exits are, because I'm not sure that even people who would have been in agreement with me today, when push comes to shove, are going to be there. Which side are they going to be on? What are they going to do? Are they going to protect me? And sometimes people say they got your back and they just stand back and watch things happen. I've watched it happen. I've watched a man. Yeah, this is tape. So I've watched it happen, and it's happened to me in front of men that should have stood up and said something and did nothing. And if it were any other woman, they would have stood up. But it was a Black woman, so they did not.
See, I'm almost on the other hand. It's like, I have no problem with me. That goes back to my other thing. It's like, people tend not to have an issue with minorities as long as they're entertaining them and as long as they're being what they think they should be, a good Black person, a good gay person. So I have less issue with, will people support me, is will you support the other Black girl in the room because she's not as personable as I am? Are you going to other her? Are you going to let people do stuff to her that you wouldn't let, because I'm Torrie, you know, everyone loves Torrie, but do you love her? Are you going to treat her the same? Or are you treating us on an individual basis?
And that's what I'd say, Torrie, when push comes to shove, you just become another Black face. You might be Torrie today, but you might be having to fight your way out of a room tomorrow.
Oh, I hope not, because
I know that sounds harsh, but that is the reality of me having to step on a mat and thinking that. Whether it's going to happen or not, I can't say. But the thought is in the back of my mind, because the history says that that's how things happen.
Gotcha.
So these things, you know, so there are things, baggage, I'll call it baggage, that I'm already going in with my eyes and ears open. Well, how is this going to go? This is their superstar. I've been set up before. Oh, can you roll with so-and-so? She's starting for, you know, she's just starting out. You hear that she's having her first MMA fight. And then, you know, I'm not going to let no, you don't know me, but I'm not going to let you, just because you're doing something, I'm not going to let you walk all over me. Yeah. And then like, you're being hard with her. Why are you being so hard with her? You just told me the girl is going, you know, is going to her first MMA fight, and to give her a good role because you thought she could beat me. Mm-hmm. You was okay. When you figured that she couldn't, then I wasn't okay. I wasn't an okay person then. And so there are these battles and little battles that are happening repeatedly. When I was in the locker room in a strange place, I make sure somebody else is in there, because my history says that if something is missing, they're going to look at the Black person.
Yeah.
That's
I was just going to say this, that so you're doing those calculations instantaneously in your head all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. 24 hours a day, except when I'm in my own house, then you're fighting with the TV, but then you have to turn the TV off. Yes, those calculations happen in the grocery store, in the school, in the job, walking down the street, going to a friend's house for a meal. Mm-hmm. This is a constant running thing. This wears down people, and there are other people, LGBTQ and the rest. This happens too when you sit in a room. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder. You may not wonder out loud, but it's all going on back here. Sometimes if you're a woman, that happens too. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, if you're a white woman and you're in a room with, and I've heard this said, and you're in a room doing jiu-jitsu with Brazilian women, you're the one out. Mm-hmm. Your beauty, your skill is nothing. Because in some places, that's what takes precedent.
So this is reminding me again, Sharicka, of your question about the parallels. Because so there's the outward treatment that different groups get, and then there are these mental calculations that we're talking about that each group needs to do. And so if there, again, speaking as a white woman, if there's any relationship to what Bernadette is describing, it's that I have to do similar calculations as a woman. Yeah. You know, I'm walking alone in the dark. I am walking by a construction site, or, whatever it happens to be, or I'm angry, those kinds of things. And so I think I mentioned that simply because there does sometimes get to be, you don't even realize how much of that calculation you're doing constantly and how much cognitive load it takes.
Yes.
But boy, I listen to you talking and I just am exhausted listening to it. So I think there's that element of it also, is different groups may have that same cognitive load requirement just to live their lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to build off what the three of you were talking about there, and I guess circling back to the overall topic of, is jiu-jitsu inclusive? I think when you look at these experiences that, Bernadette and Torrie, that all of us are talking about, and, Val, how you just said, like, even just as a woman, even, as white women, like the two of us are, these are things that we take into consideration every day, like in our normal lives. And I think when we talk about, is jiu-jitsu a safe space for everyone? Is jiu-jitsu an escape from all of the BS that happens outside of that? Like, that's what we need to examine, not just, from a man's perspective, or, from any type of person of privilege. Like, from your perspective, is it good? But also taking a deeper look and saying, what about somebody, again, who isn't fully able-bodied? What about someone who's a different race, different gender, different sexuality? Like, we need to examine every little aspect and ask, is jiu-jitsu a safe place for that person? And if you even the slightest doubt that that literally anybody could walk into that gym and feel safe and protected by every person in that gym, you can't say your gym's inclusive. And I think most gyms could do some work with that.
Absolutely agree. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being on today.
This is fun.
This is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. And going back to what you kind of touched on, I'll close out with this thought is, you talked about Jiu-Jitsu Times getting all that hate mail because you are standing your ground. And I anticipate we'll get some backlash on this, but, I think it's worth it because we're having a discussion. We're putting it out there. I've been doing Girls and Geese for 10 years, and I've never been asked, when George Floyd happened and all that horrible started, people were like, what's your stance? And I found it really interesting that people were wanting us to have some kind of accountability, to take some kind of stance in this. So for all those people that are unfollowing or, don't like what you're putting out there in your media source, Jiu-Jitsu Times, same thing here, I'm sure, but there are those that want us to say something. There are those that want to take a stance. There are those that want us to utilize our platforms like we are now to have these discussions, to open those doors to education, to open those doors to giving women like yourselves platforms to say what you got to say, because it can be heard and it should be heard. And so I want to thank all of you for being a part of this discussion, for contributing your insight, for contributing your point of views, for the resources that you provided today for people to go out there and educate themselves. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. My partner in crime, Sharicka. It's yet another awesome Girls and Geese podcast. I can't wait for this to come out. Thank you for everybody listening at home. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.
Nice meeting everyone. Thank you, guys.